The clock on the dashboard read 9:37 p.m. as Andre pulled his midnight blue BMW into the quiet streets of Oakwood Heights. The day had been long and tiring. His shoulders ached from leaning over blueprints and his mind buzzed with measurements and design problems that needed solutions. Still, there was something peaceful about driving through this neighborhood at night. Street lamps cast warm pools of light on perfectly trimmed lawns. Grand houses stood back from the road, their windows glowing with the soft light of families, winding down for the evening. Andre had always loved architecture, even as a child building structures with whatever he could find. Now at 35, he had made a name for himself designing buildings that combined beauty with function. Tonight he drove slowly, taking in the details of each home. The Victorian with its intricate woodwork, the modern masterpiece with walls of glass, the colonial revival with its stately columns. Each one told a story about the people who lived there and the history they valued. Maybe someday, he thought, allowing himself to imagine his own family in one of these houses. His wife Tara would love the gardens here. Their son would have space to play, to grow. Andre turned onto Maple Avenue, where the largest homes in the neighborhood stood on spacious lots. He slowed the car even more, admiring a particularly beautiful stone house with a curved driveway. That's when he noticed headlights behind him, moving closer. In his rearview mirror, the unmistakable shape of a police cruiser appeared. Andre checked his speed 15 miles per hour, well below the limit. He hadn't done anything wrong. Yet the police car stayed close behind him for the next block. Andre's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His heart rate picked up slightly. He'd been in situations like this before, even dressed in the simple jeans and button-down shirt he'd worn to the construction site that day, even driving an expensive car, even with all his success. Some people only saw one thing when they looked at him. Then came the flash of blue and red lights. Andre's stomach dropped, but he wasn't surprised. He took a deep breath and carefully pulled to the side of the road, making sure his movements were slow and deliberate. He placed both hands on the steering wheel where they could be seen. Inside the police car, Officer Reynolds nudged his partner. "Told you he doesn't belong here. Dispatch said a resident called about someone suspicious driving around." "Officer." Taylor nodded, already reaching for his flashlight. Andre watched in his side mirror as two officers approached, one on each side of his car. The taller one, an older man with a weathered face, rapped sharply on the driver's window. Andre pressed the button to lower it. "Good evening, officers," he said, keeping his voice steady and polite. "License and registration," the officer said, flatly shining his flashlight directly into Andre's face. "No greeting. No explanation for the stop." "May I ask why I'm being pulled over?" Andre asked calmly, though his heart was racing now. "License and registration first," the officer repeated, his tone harder. Andre nodded. "I'm going to reach for my wallet now," he said clearly, then moved his right hand slowly to his back pocket. Every movement measured, every movement announced. These were the unwritten rules he'd learned long ago. He handed over his license and reached for the glove compartment. "Now I'm getting my registration," he explained before opening it and carefully extracting the paper. The second officer, younger, with close-cropped hair, was peering through the passenger window, scanning the interior of the car with his flashlight. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" he asked. "Just looking at the houses," Andre replied. "I'm an architect. I appreciate good design." The first officer was examining Andre's license with a skeptical expression. "You're a long way from home, Mr. Washington," he said, emphasizing the last name slightly. "I work in the area," Andre explained. "My firm is designing the new office complex on Westfield Road." A light came on in one of the nearby houses. Then another. Residents were noticing the police lights. A few came to their windows. One man, in plaid pajama pants and a t-shirt, even stepped out onto his porch, watching the scene with folded arms. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area," the older officer said. "People casing houses." Andre felt a flash of anger but kept his expression neutral. "I assure you I'm just admiring the architecture, that's all." At night, driving 5 miles an hour, the younger officer's tone was openly disbelieving. It's when I had free time, Andre explained. I've been at a construction site all day. The older officer handed back the license and registration, but his face remained stern. This is a private community. People here notice when someone doesn't fit in. The words hung in the air. Their meaning couldn't have been clearer. I understand, Andre said quietly. He knew what doesn't fit in meant. I suggest you find somewhere else to do your architectural appreciation, the officer continued. These folks work hard for what they have. They get nervous when strangers drive around their homes. More lights were coming on in houses now. More faces appeared in windows. Andre felt their eyes on him, on his car, on the police. The weight of their stares pressed down on him like a physical thing. Yes, sir, Andre said, swallowing his pride. Tonight wasn't the night for a stand. Not with two officers who had already decided who he was and what he was doing here. Not with an audience of strangers who might see exactly what they expected. To see trouble. We're going to follow you out of the neighborhood, the older officer said. It wasn't a suggestion. Andre nodded. He waited for the officers to return to their vehicle, then started his engine. The police car pulled back slightly, lights still flashing, clearly waiting for him to move. Andre drove slowly down Maple Avenue, past the beautiful homes he'd been admiring, past the curious faces in windows, past the life he'd allowed himself to imagine for a brief moment. At the neighborhood entrance, a grand stone sign read, "Welcome to Oakwood Heights." Andre drove past it back onto the main road. In his mirror, he saw the police cruiser finally turn off its lights as it headed back into the community. For a long moment, Andre sat at the intersection, his turn signal blinking, filling the car with a steady, rhythmic light. Then he pulled out his phone and called his wife. "Hey," he said when she answered, his voice suddenly tired. "You won't believe what just happened." Andre's conversation with his wife was cut short when he noticed the police cruiser making a U-turn ahead. It was coming back. His grip tightened on the steering wheel as the familiar flash of red and blue lights appeared once more. "I'll call you back," he told Tara quickly. "They're stopping me again." This time the officers didn't wait in their car. Both doors opened almost before the cruiser had fully stopped. Andre watched in his mirror as they approached with quicker steps then, before their faces set with determination. "Step out of the vehicle, sir," the older officer, Officer Reynolds according to his nameplate, commanded. His hand rested near his weapon. Andre's mind raced. Had he done something wrong since driving away? Had they run his plates and found an unpaid parking ticket, a mistake in the system? "May I ask why, officer?" Andre kept his tone respectful but firm. "Step out of the vehicle now," Officer Reynolds repeated, his voice harder. Making a split-second decision, Andre reached for his phone. "Don't reach for anything," the younger officer, Taylor, shouted, his hand now fully on his holstered gun. "I'm just turning on my phone camera," Andre explained, holding the phone where they could see it. "For everyone's safety." A muscle in Officer Reynolds' jaw twitched. "We received another call. Someone matching your description was seen looking into windows on Oak Lane. Step out of the car." Andre knew he hadn't been on any street called Oak Lane. He'd driven straight through the neighborhood and out. But he also knew arguing this point from inside his car wasn't wise. Slowly, he opened the door and stepped out, making sure his phone was still recording. "I haven't been on Oak Lane," he said calmly. "I drove straight through Maple Avenue and out of the neighborhood as you instructed." "Then you won't mind coming back to speak with the homeowner who reported seeing you," Officer Taylor said. By now, a few cars had slowed to watch the scene unfolding on the side of the road. Andre felt his face grow warm with the unwanted attention, but he kept his expression neutral. Show no anger. Show no fear. Another unwritten rule. "Officers, I respect that you're doing your job, but I think there's been a mistake. I'm an architect with Rivera and Associates. I was simply admiring the homes in your neighborhood from my car. I never left my vehicle, and I certainly wasn't looking in anyone's windows." "If that's true, then you have nothing to worry about," Officer Reynolds said, but his tone suggested he didn't believe a word. A dark SUV pulled up behind the police cruiser. A man in a golf shirt and khakis stepped out, looking both concerned and curious. Andre recognized him as the man who had stood on his porch watching the first stop. "That's him, officers," the man called out, walking closer. "That's the car I saw." Andre felt a chill run through him. He hadn't done anything wrong, yet here was someone claiming he had. "Sir, I assure you, I was just driving through your neighborhood," Andre explained to the newcomer. "I'm an architect. I appreciate well-designed homes." The man looked Andre up and down, taking in his casual work clothes and work boots still dusty from the construction site. "You don't look like any architect I've ever seen," he said dismissively. Andre took a deep breath. "Not all architects wear suits and carry drafting tools," he said evenly. "Some of us actually visit construction sites. Check the back seat of my car. You'll see my hard hat and blueprints." Officer Taylor stepped closer to Andre's BMW and shined his flashlight through the window. Indeed, a white hard hat with the Rivera and Associates logo sat on the back seat next to a tube of rolled-up blueprints. "Anyone could have those," the neighbor insisted. "I know what I saw. Someone who looked just like him was peering into the Hendersons' side windows." "Sir, I can prove where I was tonight," Andre said, pulling out his phone again, slowly and deliberately. "My car has a GPS tracker for insurance purposes. I can show you exactly where I drove." He opened the app on his phone and showed the screen to the officers. A blue line traced his route through the neighborhood, down Maple Avenue only, then straight out to the main road. Officer Reynolds studied the screen, his expression unchanging. "This doesn't prove anything. You could have parked your car and walked around." Andre was about to respond when headlights appeared from the direction of Oakwood Heights. Another car pulled up, this one a sleek silver sedan. A woman in her 60s stepped out, her posture straight, her gray hair elegantly styled. "What seems to be the problem here?" she asked, her voice carrying natural authority. "Mrs. Chen." Officer Reynolds straightened slightly. "This is police business, nothing for you to worry about." The woman, Mrs. Chen, examined the scene with sharp eyes. "I was heading home from the community board meeting when I saw the commotion. Is everything all right?" "Just questioning a suspicious individual," Officer Taylor explained. "Mr. Harris here claims this man was looking into windows on his street." Mrs. Chen turned her attention to Andre. Her gaze was direct, but not unkind. "And you are?" "Andre Washington, ma'am. I'm an architect with Rivera and Associates. I was driving through your neighborhood this evening admiring the homes. That's all." Something flickered across Mrs. Chen's face. "Rivera and Associates, the firm designing our new community center?" Andre blinked in surprise. "Yes, that's correct. I'm the lead architect on that project." "Well," Mrs. Chen smiled slightly, "this is quite the coincidence. We just finished reviewing your preliminary designs tonight. Quite impressive work." Officer Reynolds and Mr. Harris exchanged uncomfortable glances. "There must be some misunderstanding," Mrs. Chen continued. "Mr. Washington couldn't have been peering into windows on Oak Lane because I was in a meeting with Ricardo Rivera until 9:15, and he mentioned his lead architect was still at the Westfield Road site checking on foundation issues." She turned to Mr. Harris. "Perhaps it was someone else you saw?" Mr. Harris shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Maybe. It was dark. But I definitely saw someone." Andre stood quietly, watching as Mrs. Chen skillfully dismantled the situation. He didn't know this woman, yet here she was speaking up for him based solely on her knowledge of his work. "Officers," Mrs. Chen said firmly, "I believe we can clear this up. Mr. Washington is going to be working closely with our community over the coming months. Perhaps instead of making him feel unwelcome, we should be extending our hospitality." Officer E. Reynolds cleared his throat. "We were just responding to a call, ma'am." "Of course," she nodded. "And now that call has been addressed. Wouldn't you agree?" The tension in the air slowly began to dissolve. Andre felt he could breathe properly, for the first time since being pulled over. "Yes, ma'am," Officer Reynolds finally said. He turned to Andre. "You're free to go, sir. Sorry for the misunderstanding." As the officers returned to their vehicle and Mr. Harris retreated to his SUV, Mrs. Chen approached Andre. "Mr. Washington," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology on behalf of our community, this should never have happened. Andre nodded, still processing the rapid turn of events. Thank you for speaking up. Don't thank me, she replied with a small smile. I just stated facts. Your design for our community center is truly exceptional. I look forward to working with you. As Mrs. Chen walked back to her car, Andre stood for a moment in the cool night air. His phone buzzed, Tara calling back, worried about the sudden end to their conversation. As he answered to reassure her, Andre watched the police cruiser drive away. The confrontation was over, but the evening's events had left their mark. Something told him this story was far from finished. The next morning dawned bright and clear, but Andre woke feeling as though a weight pressed on his chest. He'd tossed and turned all night, replaying the events in Oakwood Heights. Tara had listened quietly as he recounted everything, her eyes, sad but not surprised. They'd been through versions of this before. You should talk to Ricardo about it, she suggested over breakfast, watching him push scrambled eggs around his plate without eating. He needs to know what happened, especially if you'll be working in that neighborhood for months. Andre nodded, though the idea of discussing the incident made his stomach tighten. He prided himself on solving problems, not bringing them to his boss. But Tara was right. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about the project, the firm's reputation, and his ability to do his job. The architecture firm occupied the 12th floor of a downtown high-rise. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city skyline, and the open-plan office buzzed with the energy of designers and architects huddled over drafting tables and computer screens. Andre greeted colleagues with his usual smile, but inside, he still felt the residue of last night's humiliation. Ricardo's office door stood open as always. The founder of Rivera and Associates believed in transparency, both in architecture and in management style. Andre knocked lightly on the doorframe. Come in, Ricardo called, looking up from his computer. At 63, with salt and pepper, hair and wire-rimmed glasses, Ricardo had built the firm from nothing over 3 decades. Andre, just the man I wanted to see. Mrs. Chen from the Oakwood Heights Community Board called me this morning, singing your praises. Andre's eyebrows rose in surprise. She did? Said your designs were exactly what they wanted. Also mentioned something about meeting you last night? I thought the presentation meeting was your first introduction to the board. Andre took a deep breath and sat down across from Ricardo. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. For the next 10 minutes, Andre recounted the previous night's events, the police stops, the accusations, and Mrs. Chen's timely intervention. Ricardo's expression grew increasingly troubled as the story unfolded. This is unacceptable, Ricardo said when Andre finished. Completely unacceptable. He reached for his phone. I'm calling the community board right now. Andre held up a hand. Wait, please. I didn't come here to cause problems. I just wanted you to know what happened in case it affects the project. Ricardo leaned back in his chair, studying Andre's face. You're worried this will jeopardize the contract? It crossed my mind, Andre admitted. This is a big project for the firm. It's a big project for them too, Ricardo countered. Your design was head and shoulders above the competition. But more importantly, this isn't about business. This is about basic human dignity. Before Andre could respond, Ricardo's assistant appeared at the door. Sorry to interrupt, but the Oakwood Heights Community Board is here. They don't have an appointment, but they're quite insistent on speaking with you both. Andre and Ricardo exchanged surprised glances. Send them in, Ricardo said, standing. Moments later, Mrs. Chen entered, followed by 3 other board members. Andre recognized none of them except Mrs. Chen, who nodded to him with a small smile. Mr. Rivera, Mr. Washington, she greeted them. Thank you for seeing us without notice. After last night's unfortunate incident, the board called an emergency meeting this morning. A tall man with a neatly trimmed beard stepped forward. I'm Dr. Powell, chairman of the board. On behalf of the entire Oakwood Heights community, I want to apologize for the treatment you received, Mr. Washington. Andre nodded, uncomfortable with suddenly being the center of attention. We've spoken with the police department, continued a woman with short red hair. The officers involved have been placed on administrative leave pending review. We've also requested a formal apology from them. That's not necessary, Andre began, but Mrs. Chen interrupted gently. It is necessary, she insisted. What happened to you reflects poorly on our entire community. We pride ourselves on being progressive and welcoming. Clearly, we have work to do. Dr. Powell cleared his throat. Which brings us to the second reason for our visit. We'd like to accelerate the community center project. Ricardo raised an eyebrow. Accelerate? In what way? We want to add a cultural awareness program to the center's functions, explained the fourth board member, a younger man with glasses. Educational events, art exhibitions, community dialogues, all focused on bringing diverse perspectives to Oakwood Heights, and we'd like Mr. Washington to lead the design modifications, Mrs. Chen added. With full creative control, Andre felt a rush of conflicting emotions, pride in his work being recognized, satisfaction at the board's earnest response, but also wariness. Was this just damage control? Reading his expression, Mrs. Chen spoke directly to him. Mr. Washington, we can't undo what happened, but we can learn from it and grow. Your experience, painful as it was, has forced our community to confront uncomfortable truths. We're asking for your help to build something positive from this moment. The office fell silent as everyone waited for Andre's response. He thought about declining, about asking to be reassigned to another project. That would certainly be easier. But then he thought about the young people who would use this community center. Kids of all backgrounds who deserved a space that celebrated diversity rather than feared it. He thought about the opportunity to create something meaningful, something that might prevent another architect from being treated as he had been. I appreciate your response to the situation, Andre said carefully. But if I'm going to do this, I need to know it's not just about making yourselves feel better. Real change takes more than a building. Dr. Powell nodded solemnly. We understand. That's why we've also voted to form a community action committee focused on addressing bias within Oakwood Heights. We'd like you to be part of that too, if you're willing. Ricardo watched his lead architect closely, ready to support whatever decision he made. Andre took a deep breath. I'll need to think about the committee position. But as for the community center, yes, I'll continue as lead architect, with one condition. Name it, said Mrs. Chen. The resident who made false accusations against me last night, Mr. Harris. I want him involved in the project somehow. Not pushed out or shamed, but engaged in the process. The board members exchanged surprised glances. You want to work with the man who caused this whole situation? The red-haired woman asked incredulously. Andre nodded. Change doesn't happen by talking only to people who already agree with you. Besides, I'm guessing Mr. Harris isn't the only resident with concerns about outsiders. Better to address those concerns directly than pretend they don't exist. Smile slowly spread across Mrs. Chen's face. Mr. Washington, I think our community center is in exactly the right hands. As they left, Ricardo clapped Andre on the shoulder. You continue to surprise me, he said with admiration. Most people would have walked away. Andre smiled, feeling some of the weight lifting from his chest. Sometimes walking away is necessary, but sometimes staying and rebuilding is more powerful. Back at his desk, Andre pulled out fresh drafting paper and began sketching new ideas for the Oakwood Heights Community Center, a building that would now stand for much more than either he or the residents had originally planned. 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Andre threw himself into redesigning aspects of the community center, often working late into the night. The new plans included an open gallery space for cultural exhibitions, meeting rooms for community dialogues, and a youth center with programs focused on diversity education. Each morning, he arrived at the construction site to oversee progress on the foundation work already underway. It was on a crisp Tuesday morning that Andre first noticed the black SUV parked across from the construction site. He recognized it immediately. Mr. Harris's vehicle. The man himself sat inside watching the activity on the site with an unreadable expression. Andre considered walking over to introduce himself properly, but before he could decide, the SUV pulled away. The same scene repeated the next day and the day after. Always watching, never approaching. He's been coming every day this week, said Lynn, the site foreman, during their afternoon meeting. Security mentioned it yesterday. Andre nodded. I know. I'm handling it. That evening, instead of heading back to the office after the site closed down, Andre walked to his car and waited. Sure enough, as the construction crews departed, the black SUV appeared again at its usual spot. This time, Andre was ready. He drove his BMW across the street and parked alongside the SUV, rolling down his window. Mr. Harris looked startled, then embarrassed. For a long moment, neither man spoke. You're welcome to come see the site up close, Andre finally said. I could give you a tour, explain what we're building. Mr. Harris stared straight ahead through his windshield. I don't need a tour, he said stiffly. Andre nodded. Okay. May I ask why you've been watching us work then? The older man's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Mrs. Chen asked me to join the Community Action Committee, he said, the words seeming to cost him considerable effort. I said no. I see, Andre replied, though he wasn't sure he did. I've lived in Oakwood Heights for 27 years, Mr. Harris continued, still not looking at Andre. Never had any trouble. Never caused any trouble. I look out for my neighbors. Andre listened, hearing the defensiveness beneath the words. That night, Mr. Harris hesitated. I did see someone looking in the Hendersons' windows. It wasn't you. Police caught him 2 nights later, some kid from outside the neighborhood. Had a history of break-ins. I'm glad they caught him, Andre said carefully. I mixed you up. With him. Same color car, driving slow. Mr. Harris finally turned to look at Andre. But that's not all of it, is it? The question hung in the air between them. Andre could have taken the easy way out, could have agreed that it was a simple case of mistaken identity, but that would have been a disservice to both of them. No, he said quietly. That's not all of it. Mr. Harris nodded, a quick jerk of his head. I've been thinking a lot these past 2 weeks. After Mrs. Chen called to tell me who you really were, after the board's emergency meeting, I've been doing a lot of thinking. That's why you've been watching the site? Partly, Mr. Harris admitted. Partly to see if you were really who they said you were, an architect, and partly because... He trailed off, then squared his shoulders. Because I needed to face what I did. Andre hadn't expected this level of self-reflection. Mr. Harris. Tom, the older man interrupted. My name's Tom. Tom, Andre nodded. I appreciate you telling me this. Not everyone would. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Tom said quickly. What I did was wrong. Plain and simple. I'm just trying to figure out where to go from here. Andre considered this. The Community Action Committee could use someone who knows the neighborhood as well as you do. Tom gave a humorless laugh. You think they want me there after what happened? I'd be the example of what not to do. Or you could be the example of someone willing to change, Andre suggested. That's a powerful message too. Before Tom could respond, Andre's phone rang. It was Ricardo. Andre, where are you? His boss asked without preamble. There's an emergency board meeting at Oakwood Heights in 30 minutes. They specifically requested you be there. Andre frowned. Emergency meeting? About what? They didn't say, but it sounds serious. The police chief will be there. Andre's stomach tightened. Had something else happened? Another incident? I'll be there, he said, ending the call. He looked back at Tom, who was watching him with concern. Everything okay? Tom asked. Not sure. Andre replied honestly. There's an emergency meeting at Oakwood Heights. I need to go. Tom nodded slowly. I'll think about what you said. About the committee. 25 minutes later, Andre walked into the Oakwood Heights community building where a large group had already gathered. Mrs. Chen waved him over to the front of the room, where Ricardo stood talking with Dr. Powell and a man in a police uniform with a chief's insignia. Andre, thank you for coming on such short notice, Dr. Powell said, shaking his hand. This is Chief Matthews. He has some information that affects the community center project. The police chief, a stocky man with graying hair at his temples, extended his hand. "Mr. Washington, I've heard a lot about you recently." "Chief," Andre acknowledged, shaking the offered hand while trying to gauge the situation. "Let's begin," Mrs. Chen called, bringing the room to order. Chief Matthews stepped forward. "Many of you know that 2 weeks ago, there was an incident involving one of our patrol units and Mr. Washington here." He gestured toward Andre. "The officers involved have been under investigation since then." The room grew absolutely still. "This afternoon, during a routine audit of patrol car footage, we discovered something disturbing." The chief nodded to a technician in the corner, who dimmed the lights and turned on a projector. A video began playing, dashcam footage from the police cruiser that had followed Andre. The officers' voices came through clearly. "Got another. One who doesn't know his place," Officer Reynolds could be heard saying as they followed Andre's BMW. "Third one this month," replied Officer Taylor. "Let's remind him." The audio continued, revealing a pattern of targeted harassment that extended far beyond one incident with Andre. The officers discussed their system for keeping undesirables out of upscale neighborhoods throughout the city. When the video ended, the room remained silent. Andre felt a complex mix of emotions, validation that he hadn't imagined or exaggerated what happened, but also sadness that the problem ran so much deeper than one night and two officers. Chief Matthews cleared his throat. "Both officers have been terminated, effective immediately. We're also reviewing all stops they've conducted over the past 2 years to identify other potential victims." "Chief?" Andre spoke up, his voice firm but not angry. "What about other officers? Is there training in place to prevent this from happening again?" The police chief nodded. "That's actually why I asked for this meeting. We need to completely overhaul our community policing approach. I believe your community center could be part of that solution." As the discussion continued, outlining plans for police community workshops and training programs that could be housed in the new center, Andre noticed movement at the back of the room. Tom Harris had slipped in and was listening intently, his face troubled but determined. Their eyes met across the room, and Tom gave a small nod, a gesture that spoke volumes about the journey they had both embarked on, from confrontation to conversation, from accusation to understanding. The community center Andre was designing would now serve an even greater purpose than anyone had initially imagined. It would not just be a building, but a starting point for real change. 6 months later, the Oakwood Heights Community Center stood gleaming in the afternoon sun. Its modern design featured sweeping glass walls, warm wood accents, and an open central courtyard with trees and benches. The building seemed to welcome visitors with its very structure. No intimidating walls, no closed-off spaces, just openness and light. Today was the grand opening. Andre stood off to the side, watching as people streamed in through the main entrance. Families with children, elderly couples, teenagers, people of all backgrounds, exactly the mix he had hoped to see. He spotted Mrs. Chen greeting guests near the refreshment table, and Dr. Powell showing a group of visitors the new art exhibition featuring work from local high school students. "Nervous?" Tara asked, slipping her hand into his. She looked beautiful in a simple blue dress, her natural hair styled in an elegant updo for the occasion. Andre squeezed her hand. "A little. It's a big day." Their 4-year-old son tugged at Andre's pants leg. "Daddy, can I see the playground now?" Andre smiled down at him. "Soon, buddy. First, we have to listen to some boring grown-up speeches." Tara laughed. "Don't tell him that. We want him to think speeches are exciting." "Trust me," Andre winked. "These ones will be." As if on cue, Ricardo approached them, beaming with pride. "Andre, the place looks even more incredible than the renderings. You've outdone yourself." "We've all outdone ourselves," Andre corrected him. "The whole team deserved credit for this one." Ricardo nodded, then lowered his voice. "Have you seen who's here?" Andre followed his gaze to where Officers Reynolds and Taylor stood awkwardly near the entrance, dressed in civilian clothes. The sight of them sent a small jolt through him. He hadn't seen either man since that night 6 months ago, Chief Matthews invited them, Ricardo explained. Said it was part of their community service requirements. The sensitivity training program starts next week, and he thought seeing the center completed might drive home what this place represents. Before Andre could respond, the microphone squeaked as someone tapped it. The crowd quieted as Chief Matthews stepped up to the podium set up in the courtyard. Thank you all for coming today, the police chief began. This center represents more than just a new building in our community. It represents a new beginning. He spoke briefly about the changes implemented in the police department over the past 6 months. New training protocols, community engagement initiatives, and accountability measures. Then he introduced Mrs. Chen, who spoke about the cultural programs that would be housed in the center. And now, Mrs. Chen said, I'd like to introduce the man who made all of this possible, not just through his brilliant design work, but through his willingness to turn a painful experience into an opportunity for growth. Please welcome Andre Washington. The applause was warm and genuine as Andre approached the podium. He looked out at the faces watching him, some familiar now, some still strangers, and felt a moment of profound gratitude for how far they had all come. Thank you, he began simply. 6 months ago, I drove through Oakwood Heights admiring the beautiful homes. Today, I stand inside a building that belongs to all of us. The journey from there to here wasn't one I would have chosen, but it's one I'm grateful for. Andre spoke about architecture as more than just designing buildings. It was about creating spaces where people could come together, where barriers could be broken down, where communities could be strengthened. This center has meeting rooms, where difficult conversations can happen, art spaces where diverse voices can be heard, and a playground where our children can learn that friendship doesn't see color. He smiled at his son, who was bouncing impatiently in his seat. But most importantly, it has all of you, people willing to do the hard work of building community. As Andre concluded his speech, he noticed Tom Harris standing at the back of the crowd. The older man had become a surprising ally over the past months, initially joining the Community Action Committee with reluctance, but eventually becoming one of its most committed members. After the speeches ended and the ribbon was cut, Andre made his way through the crowd, accepting congratulations and answering questions about the design. Eventually, he found himself face-to-face with Officers Reynolds and Taylor. There was an awkward moment as the 3 men regarded each other, history hanging heavy between them. Mr. Washington, Officer Reynolds finally spoke, his voice stiff but sincere. I want to apologize for what happened that night. There's no excuse for how we treated you. Officer Taylor nodded his agreement. The chief's making us part of the first training group here at the center. Never thought I'd be back in school at my age. Andre studied their faces, not seeking remorse but genuine understanding. It's not about punishment, he said quietly. It's about growth. We all have blind spots. The question is what we do once they're pointed out to us. Across the room, Andre's son had discovered the children's area and was playing with several other kids, their laughter rising above the murmur of adult conversations. Among them was a little girl Andre recognized as the daughter of one of the Oakwood Heights residents, who had initially been most resistant to the new direction of the community center. That's what this is all about, Andre said, nodding toward the children. Building a different future. Later, as the celebration continued, Andre found a quiet moment with Tara in the rooftop garden he had designed as a peaceful retreat within the busy center. So, she said, leaning against his shoulder, how does it feel to see it all come together? Andre took a deep breath, looking out over Oakwood Heights, the neighborhood that had once expelled him and now welcomed him as one of its own. It feels like the beginning of something important, he replied. Not just this building, but what it represents. Real change doesn't happen overnight. It happens conversation by conversation, person by person. Below them, in the courtyard, Tom Harris was showing a group of visitors the community garden plots where residents would grow vegetables together. Chief Matthews was engaged in conversation with Dr. Powell about the upcoming police training program. Mrs. Chen was introducing new residents to longtime community members. Small steps, real people, hard conversations. That's how change happened. You know, Tara said with a smile, We drive through this neighborhood a lot more often these days. Andre laughed. Yeah, I guess we do. Think we might ever live here? The question caught him by surprise. Here? In Oakwood Heights? Tara nodded. There's that house on Maple Avenue that just went up for sale. The Victorian with the wraparound porch. You always admired it. Andre thought about it. About how far they had all come in 6 months, about the work still to be done, about what it might mean to be part of this community's ongoing journey. Maybe, he said thoughtfully. Just maybe. Down in the courtyard, his son's laughter rang out, a sound of pure joy that knew nothing of boundaries or prejudice, the sound of hope, the sound of possibility, the sound of a future worth building.